Happy New Year for our beloved community. We gather together at the start of this new year as people of many ages, as people of many sexual orientations and gender identities, as people of many races and ethnicities, as people of many theologies and religious backgrounds. Woven together in our love for this community, with our hopes and dreams and prayers for the year before us, with our hearts and minds and spirits ready to be touched by the year before us, with our hands and time and talents ready to be offered in the year before us, we gather together at the start of this year with gratitude and love. For those who have come before us, for those who stand here with us, may it be a good year, may it be a sweet year. Come, let us worship together. Good morning, welcome. We bid you welcome. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think a certain way, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than a sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. Welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is John Benarowitz. I've been a member here for 7 years or so. And this morning, we are very fortunate to have a guest speaker later on in the service, Joe Pittenger. I'll tell you a little bit more about Joe before he comes up. And also, I'd like to extend welcome to any visitors we have today. After the service, you're welcome to join us afterwards for coffee downstairs in the Adams Hall. I see everybody else with masks. We still are COVID-friendly in masking up. There are religious education classes that are being held in the classrooms downstairs. Joys and sorrows can be shared later in the service. As always, you can text any joys and sorrows you have to the number you find in the order of service. Also, there's blue cards in the pews that you can hand to the ushers. Now, if you join with me in our shared affirmation of mission. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, and live with compassion. I don't believe we have any announcements for the day unless there is. So there's not only, I hit the under there. That was, we got about 3 or 4.
You might have seen the slides of our project this month, Jackets for Jobs. The name's a little bit misleading, but it is for people returning to the workplace who might need interview-appropriate clothing. So downstairs on the coat rack closest to the comfort rooms, you will see some things hanging up there. This is where you want to leave your clothes. There's hangers there. Everything must be on a hanger. Clean. I was thrilled to realize this is how long I've worn this. It's been so long. It was dry clean. It doesn't have to necessarily be dry clean, but as long as it's clean. But speaking of that, they're also looking for the donation of a steamer for clothes. So if you happen to have one of those you're not using or have a spare one, you can leave that downstairs. They're accepting, skirts, dresses, jackets, pants. Kyle even asked about ties, absolutely ties, jewelry, and shoes in good repair. Just leave them downstairs, and please refrain from leaving your jackets that you're wearing down there. I moved a couple today that I didn't think were meant as the donations. There is a sign right above the rack, so and we'll be doing this until the 29th, every Sunday this month. If we get something that we deem, someone asked me about this, that we deem not quite up to par for an interview, we will have another org that we can pass that on to. We're not having a rummage sale, so don't bring everything. But if you happen to have something, don't worry, it's not going to be thrown out. We'll find a good use for it. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kurt Thornblade of the Social Justice Committee and also with the work of our committee. 2 social justice activities that everybody in this church can get involved in. Really important to get out there. In one case, even out there on the streets to fight for the things we believe in. My assistant, who has been in many Black Lives Matter marches, is going to pass this out. This year is the 60th anniversary of the Reverend Martin Luther King's March on Washington, I Have a Dream speech. That was in 1963. I remember it. Maybe not everybody does. The Detroit Martin Luther King Day Committee has an annual meeting in March. This year it's going to be held at the historic St. Matthew's, St. Joseph's Episcopal Church on Woodward Avenue in Detroit. The activities consist of a rally and cultural presentation, which goes from noon to 1:30, a march, which goes from 1:40 to 1:30, a community meal from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. It's a great family activity. Bring your kids. These kids downstairs, if you're a parent or a grandparent, they will march. You can count on it. Sometime in their lives, they'll march. And this is a chance as a parent that you can get them involved in probably the safest march they'll ever be in. They love it. You can wear your buttons, you can bring your signs, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, support choice, immigration reform, whatever campaigns you've been in, wear your buttons, wear your red vest. I'm a UU. I've been vaccinated. Just bring it along. I thought that we could meet here maybe about 10:30 on the morning. That'll be a holiday, a Monday morning. We can meet here about 10:30. We can figure out how to share rides and be down there with our kids and and people that aren't driving down there in time to do it. So my assistant is passing out some information about the march. I'll be there. I hope to see everybody else there. The second thing that I want to talk about is Your United Way sponsored a program called the Equity Challenge. And this is an anti-racism activity where it's a combination of internet-based and small meeting-based. It was going to be sponsored by the Farmington Public Schools. Some conservative people on the Farmington Public Schools decided they didn't want to put that information out. We have a friend in this church that you probably don't know about. The Reverend Dr. Patricia Coleman is the pastor of the Farmington Hills African Methodist Episcopal Church. Now, just as we are the vanguard of the Church of Tolerance, Questioning, Justice, and Reason, the African Methodist Episcopal Church is the vanguard of the African American religious movement. She's an African American. She asked us to put out, and she has a committee, which if you'd like to join, you can. It's called the Beloved Justice Initiative. And she asked us, church to church, put this out, that this is paid for. It's sponsored by such radical organizations as Henry Ford Hospital, Pete Marwick accounting firm, and as Lincoln once said, is prejudice in this society so deep that it affects even me? And yeah, it affects all of us. So get involved in the 1619 committee and work with us on the Social Justice Committee. Wear your buttons. See you on the streets.
Hi, I'm Becca from RE. Once again, here to beseech your assistance with RE. I promise it's not scary. The kids are nice. You are never alone. We give you extensive lesson plans, so it's very fun. We have a number of dates here open. Throw down your name, throw down your email address. We'll get a hold of you ahead of time. We'll give you plans. We are not going to leave you alone with small running children. They might run, but you won't be alone. So sign up and have fun.
George Rourke from the Membership Committee. This also won't be dangerous. At 11:45 this morning, we're going to have a class on UU and U. And we're going to cover the history of UUCF, how we operate our committees and our bylaws, our organization, and a chance to understand how you become a member of UUCF. So if this is of interest to you, please join us at 11:45 in the Marge Brown Room, and it'll last about an hour to an hour and a half.
And more from the Membership Committee. In your e-blast this week and also on the magnet, I think, is information on a very neat thing we're doing Saturday the 21st. We're going to the roller derby, and it'll be fun. Marie's been there several times. She says it's a great time, a lot of fun. She also said it's a good role model for kids. So hopefully we'll have more people there. It should be fun. The other thing I just need to ask, we're going to try to set up a theater night with going to a play at the Farmington Players here. We need to put tickets aside. Just give me some idea. It's probably going to be either February 11th, a Saturday, or Friday the 17th. Just a show of hands. How many people think they might show up for that? Okay, great. That'll, and we'll probably try to do a potluck here. Maybe we can work on childcare or something of that sort. So That's the end of it. Thanks.
So when I said no announcements, yeah. Is there anybody who, doesn't have one at this point? That's wrong. And some, as like Tom was just suggesting, a lot of it's in the magnet as well too, if you need to see some details on some of those things. I can endorse the roller derby. I've been there as well. It is fun. It is fun. Lighthearted fun. And now, please rise as you are willing and able for our first hymn, number 291. Well, hymn number 291, and we're going to sing all 3 verses. Not sure if it was Jess or Diana that chose the music, but I see they waited till I was speaker to whip out the German. That's the only German I know is Schnitzel and Gewürztraminer, but now a reading. We create a web of life. This is finally the time to let go of that crazy notion that we can live separate and aloof from one another. This is the time at last that we can become home to each other, to our mutual belonging. And we create a web of life out of which every single one of us can use everything our stories have given us. Every part of our lives, even the cruelty, even the abuse, even the addictions, even the loneliness, even the failures, a web of life is created within which you can rest in that knowing. Because out of that, you can act. Out of that, all power is yours. Out of that, you travel light. And out of that, you can step forward. We create a web of life. Let every encounter be a homecoming as we step forward now for the healing of our world. The world is not going to be saved by good people or noble people. The world is going to be healed by ordinary people, like you and me, who are not afraid of pain and who are not afraid of loving each other. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our guest speaker today, Joe Pittenger. Joe is a humanist chaplain, life and career coach, and real estate investor based in Toledo, Ohio. After 13 years of working in church leadership while as a pastor, he deconverted from fundamental Christianity. Following his deconversion, he became director of career development of the Clergy Project, which is a nonprofit committed to providing counseling, career transition assistance, and peer support and community to deconverted religious leaders in 35 countries around the world. Joe has earned a Master's of Theology and a Bachelor's of Sociology from Mount Vernon Nazarene University, life and career coaching certifications from the Transformation Academy, and the Science of Wellbeing certification from Yale University, and a chaplain's endorsement from the Humanist Society. And with that,
play a little game? Okay, good. Here we go. 3 of these kids belong together. 3 of these kids are kind of the same. But one of these kids is doing his own thing. Now it's time to play our game. It's time to play our game. Can you tell which kid is doing his own thing? Well, which of these kids is doing his own thing? Come on now, can you tell me which one? Can you guess which kid is doing his own thing? Before my song is done. Hey, how'd you do? Did you guess which kid was doing his own thing? Well, if you guessed this one, then you're absolutely right. Because he's playing football, and the other kids are all playing baseball. So that's the right answer.
Good morning. We went from speaking in German to Sesame Street, so we'll see where else we go this morning. Have you ever felt maybe like the kid in that video, which, by the way, he was playing football. He might be able to get a starting spot for my favorite team, the Cleveland Browns. So, but have you ever felt that way, that you were doing something different? Maybe everybody else around you was doing things a different way. Have you ever felt that way? I know I have, and it can be difficult. This morning, I'd like to share a story of how I had to go against the grain. I had to seek for what I thought was right, even though it cost me a lot, but how it was completely worth it. And then I want to encourage and give honor to the 4th principle, that in this congregation, there is a right to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, that we can go against the grain, that we can think differently, and that's perfectly okay, that we can be different, but yet still united. So my story of how I had to go against the grain. As I've heard from various people here this morning, I grew up in a highly religious home. My grandfather had been a pastor, and my father was a pastor. Can you take a guess at what I did? I didn't become a dentist. I didn't become a doctor. I became a pastor, of course. And I loved it. I enjoyed it. I watched my father teach many times growing up, watched my grandfather, and those are my heroes. That's what I wanted to do. So that's what I did. I ended up going to university that my church sponsored, and then going on and going to their seminary and attaining a Master's of Theology, and then becoming an ordained minister. And as I've said, and I can't say enough, I truly enjoyed it. In the summer of 2016, I was invited to speak at a conference in the country of Denmark, which I will say, my commute here this morning was a little bit easier. I-75 does have its potholes, but it's a lot better than sitting on a small little plane for 14 hours overnight, which when I went to the conference, I had a wedding the day beforehand, and I thought, all right, well, I'll just sleep on the plane that night. It'll be all right. Note to self, you don't sleep on planes, all right? So I get to the conference there, no sleep. It ends up being okay, though. That week, I end up giving 10 speeches, 10 messages on living an amazing, full life. But by doing it in the way that I thought was correct, the way that my religious community had taught me, it went really well. So well. It was a very charismatic place. I remember seeing people rolling on the floor laughing, what they would call contagious laughter. And I thought, that's different than what I'm used to, but okay. It seemed to, the words that I spoke seemed to connect with people. But something interesting happened. I came back from that and I thought, I was in what is considered one of the happiest countries in the world, if not the happiest country, according to the World Happiness Index, the country of Denmark. But what's interesting is that most of the people there see things differently than I did. How could this be? I really thought that what I thought was absolute truth was kind of the only way. So how could these people have so much contentment, joy, fulfillment, however you want to word it, happiness in their life? Well, that was in my head, but I kind of just swept it away. I don't know. God works in mysterious ways is what I probably told myself. Well then, I decided to write a book. I wanted to take the 10 messages I'd given at this conference in Denmark. I wanted to take these messages and put them in book form because I felt so strongly about this message that I shared that I wanted to try to reach more people. When I would go and speak at different places, I would often think about who would be there that day. All my life, it mostly been people like me. When I started to write a book, I thought, I want to try to reach people who aren't like me. I want to try to share what I have to say with people who think differently. But as I started to put myself in their shoes, I started to see maybe there's different ways of looking at things. Maybe I don't have all the answers. I wasn't for sure, though. This is what I had thought for many years in my life. And I thought, okay, I think that what I'm saying is correct. What I'm teaching others, what I'm practicing in my life is correct. It's absolute truth. But I want to know, because I want to live amazing, a full life, a satisfying life. So I want to know, am I living a lie? Am I living correctly? So I started a search. That search started out, I thought, maybe it'll take a week or two or a month, and then I'll find all the answers that I know that I have, I don't understand the answers now, but I'll search for them, they'll come to me. A search that started out as maybe 10 hours of reading some books and listening to some YouTube debates, it quickly grew into 100 hours. And then it quickly grew into 1,000 hours. And at that point, I thought, I get paid for what I do. If I can't see things in the same way anymore, I don't get paid anymore. I like to make money. I just bought a house. I started thinking about, what if I can no longer see these things anymore? This is how I know to make money. This is what my grandfather did. This is what my father did. And this is what I love to do. It's not like something I just did for money that I had to do. I truly enjoyed it. But I started thinking, I haven't made up my mind yet on my different thoughts and beliefs, but what if? I'll definitely lose my job and my career. What about relationships? Pretty much 99% of the people in my life thought the same way. What if I see it differently? How will my family view me? How will my spouse feel when I come home and I say, guess what? I don't think the same way anymore. Unfortunately, the holy text of my tradition don't speak too kindly about being unequally yoked. It says, what does light have to do with darkness? Ouch. Those 1,000 hours, they kept on going. I mean, I wanted to know that I knew that I knew that I knew. I mean, this was a decision that would change everything for me. So I had to know. I was really fighting to live an authentic life. Authentic, it shares the Greek root of the word auto, which if someone writes autobiography, it's self-written. So to be authentic, we have to be true to ourselves. And we can't be like the video. We can't look at everybody else around us and saying they're playing baseball, but maybe football's okay too. We have to take the pen. And we have to say, I don't care what society says, what my culture, what my family, what my friends say. I have to live my life. This morning, I think about your fourth principle, your fourth value, the right to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. At a certain point in my life, I had to say, you know what? I didn't use those exact words. I said I have to allow myself for a free and responsible search for truth and meaning in my life. One of the hard things for me was, unfortunately, due to the religious community that I was in, I couldn't share my struggle with anybody. I couldn't share my search. And that, my goal here this morning isn't to rain or speak poorly of other places, but I will say, shame on them. I hadn't even changed my mind on things, but I simply couldn't even say, you know what? I'm struggling with this belief. I'm struggling with this thought. I didn't feel that I could do that. So 3 years of my life, I was quite lonely. I was around lots of people, hadn't even changed my mind yet on things, but I felt so alone. I couldn't tell people who I would say were some of the closest people to me. How unfortunate is that? After 3 years and what I calculate to be about 6,000 hours of pretty intense study, I'm glad I live in an age of the internet. After 3 years and 6,000 hours, I came to a conclusion. I had seen the writing on the wall for a while. I knew the direction it was happening, that it was going. But I think that I had to work up some courage in here to finally admit it to myself, to be authentic. I've talked about the etymology of authentic. I'm going to say the etymology of the word courage. It comes from the Latin root of cor, C-O-R, and cor in Latin means heart. And imagine yourself without your heart. It's impossible. None of us will be alive without our heart. So just as we need our heart to live, we need courage to truly live. And so I worked up the courage, and I told some people who were closest to me. And then 3 days later, I went into an elders meeting. I didn't have a backup plan of what I was going to do, but I knew I was tired. I was tired of being alone, not being able to share, not having that freedom of speech. And I went into an elders meeting. It was nearly 4 years ago to this date. It was January 19th, 8 a.m. in the morning. I'll never forget that day because it's the day that my life changed. I stayed up all night because I couldn't sleep. And I said, I'm sorry to say, but I can no longer adhere to the core doctrines and tenets of our church. And I gave up my ordination. And some of my worst fears came true. I lost my job, I lost my career, something that I love so much. I lost friendships. And I can sit here and say from one point, well, maybe they weren't the best friendships to begin with. But I don't want to sugarcoat it. It sucks. It just plain sucks. I've had people who've never talked to me again because I see things a different way. I forgive them. I want the best for them. I want them to adhere, not to adhere, but to see a guideline like this and be encouraged to say, you know what? We can think different ways. We can have a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And then as the third principle says, we can accept one another. If you think different ways, you're not going to hell. I had to deal with that in my mind. What if I'm wrong? What if I go to hell? That's what I've been told my whole life. So I left my flock. I left my fold. I left my community, the fellowship I had always known. And I started out kind of fresh. I took the pen and I started writing for myself. One of the silver linings in this all is I get to work for a nonprofit now called the Clergy Project. And the Clergy Project, it was founded a little bit over 10 years ago by 4 wonderful people. One of them you might be familiar with, Richard Dawkins. And the Clergy Project, it helps people who, just like me, clergy, as you could probably realize by the name, who no longer hold to the same beliefs. And most of them are at more closed-minded, fundamental type places. Some of them have difficult situations. So I work for the nonprofit, and my specific job is I oversee their career development department. So I work with pastors who on Sunday are preaching and sharing, but on Monday they give me a call and they say, I just don't know. I'm not for sure. And they say, I can't tell anybody. I'll lose everything. This last year I had the privilege of working with an individual who had been a pastor for nearly 30 years. He was in his 50s. And not only had he changed his his theological understandings, but he told me in the last year, he had taken a look in the mirror and he said, you're gay, and it's okay. It doesn't matter what your whole community says. It doesn't matter that they see things differently. You got to be honest with yourself. He lost everything. Family, his job, his career. But is he in a better place? Absolutely. Absolutely. Those stories can even seem somewhat mild. We've worked with individuals who unfortunately live in one of the 11 countries that still exist today where you can be killed, legally killed, for having the wrong religion or the wrong idea. We've helped them in various ways. I'm passionate about the work of our organization. My goal here this morning, though, as I said earlier, it's not to speak poorly of some of the communities, some of the different churches, denominations. There's a lot of good in a lot of them. I have to give them grace and empathy, for I once was very closed-minded. It's not my goal to speak poorly of them, but rather my goal this morning is to encourage you and to thank your congregation that you have this principle. You don't have doctrines that people have to adhere to. You have guiding principles that say, hey, these are really good ideas. And the fourth one, I want to highlight again. You have the right to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And I'm sure that all of us see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we probably see differently on a lot of other things. And that's okay. As the other principles say, There's inherent worth and dignity of every person in this room and every person on this earth. That we can have equity and justice and compassion in our human relationships. That just because you see something differently doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't make my way better and your way less. We can see things differently. So I encourage you as a congregation to keep that principle ever alive. Because as someone who has seen it differently, as someone who works with people on a daily basis, who are in the midst of losing everything, this principle is so important. Let it be a beacon of hope to others, to other communities that are like this, to encourage them. That's okay to think outside the box. It's okay if you're not a baseball player like everybody else and you see things differently. It's okay. And I encourage you in your life, maybe you're going through something that goes against the norm. Be authentic, have courage, have heart. When you do so, you will truly live the best life that you can. You will truly come alive. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning and share about this. I'll say it again. It's so important, that fourth principle. Keep it alive. After the service, if you have any questions about the nonprofit, the Clergy Project that I work for, which, by the way, their website is clergyproject.org. If you have any questions about it, or just questions about my journey or anything else, I'd love to connect. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Joe. That was for reminding us of our own fourth principle, Yeah. I think it turns out, just by judging what you're saying, that you know our principles better than I do, actually, which is probably it's kind of a lesson in itself. Like, I need to get refreshed with my own religion. For the offering today, we give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than just ourselves. And we give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. And at this time, we'd also like to take a moment to recognize the countless non-financial contributions that we all make to keep this congregation going. Thank you. Before we jump into joys and sorrows, I want to take a minute to see if there's any visitors. If you're a visitor for the first time to us today and you would like to stand and tell us a little bit about yourself so that we could get to meet you and how you know us. Any? Don't know. Okay. At this time, if there's any joys and sorrows, we want to share. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that has been shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditations as a gift of compassion and strength. Now please rise as you are willing and able for our second hymn, number 131 in the gray books, Love Will Guide Us. Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the servant of truth. Question your convictions, for beliefs too tightly held strangle the mind and its natural wisdom. Suspect all certitudes, for the world whirls on, nothing abides. Yet in our inner rooms, full of doubt, inquiry, and suspicion, let a corner be reserved for trust, for without trust there is no space for communities to gather or for friendships to be forged. Indeed, this is the small corner where we connect and reconnect with each other.